Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod. Alan, if we start with you, a win last Saturday against Fiji. Andy Farrell didn't seem too happy with it. What did you make of it? Being a bit harsh in Ireland, is he?
No, he's not. He's been honest, I think, and I like the fact that he wasn't trying to hide, the performance and the disappointments of the performance. It's always a difficult game, and even chatting to many ex-internationals during the week and rugby people in general, particularly people who've played in these games before these November internationals, the middle game, it can always be a tricky one. You can get a little bit relaxed in yourself. It's on the back of a really good win against South Africa, a very physical game. And it's not a conscious decision that you drop your standards a little bit, but it's understandable that everybody in the group probably and outside of the group, the fans at the stadium, it's all a little bit jovial there on Saturday. It's a 1 o'clock kickoff. It's not an excuse because it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be used as an excuse, but it's a reality sometimes that it can just be that type of a situation. And, certainly the team that played, they were trying, they were a little bit slow out of the blocks. Fiji obviously got a brilliant early try. We know they're going to do that. Ireland were effective and dominant then with their maul and their direct approach, and they got some tries. And you think after half time, you're kind of going, Ireland will kick on here now, and we get this 20-minute blast of dominance and front foot rugby, but it didn't happen. And part of that, Stuart, is you have to give credit to Fiji. They were illegal in a lot of things they did, but that was down to their competitiveness and their fight. And, they jumped the gun. They were pulling down mauls. They struggled there in the maul area. They were incredibly quick off the line with their defense. And, Vern Cotter, he's a tough, abrasive coach. And I think that's, you can see his imprint there. But from an Irish point of view, it was a bit disappointing. It was disappointing as well when, there's a period there where Fiji are down to 13 men. We had this situation last year in the Six Nations against Italy. It's something that, it's not a big issue, but I just think if you get a sniff of a situation like that in the World Cup, and it could happen very easily, because I think the referees are going to be very, very strict at the World Cup next year. Discipline's going to be a big part of that. You've got to capitalize. You've got to play what's in front of you. You've got to find the space. You automatically think that the space is going to be out in the back line, but sometimes teams just really fan out. They don't compete at the breakdown. And that's something to look back at. But overall, I wasn't in a feeling leaving the stadium think that you've got to criticize everyone here and it's not good enough. It's just one of those days that, of course, things can be better. And if we want to improve and really get that depth chart in a better position for next year, it should have been better. So Andy Farrell was pretty upfront about that. But I wouldn't think it's something that's going to overly concern people going forward. Obviously, I think this week, and we'll talk about that in depth, it's back to that kind of high, intense standard, and hopefully they can find that bit of spark. But that spark was missing last Saturday.
Yeah, fair enough. Maybe my words of Andy Farrell being harsh on his team weren't correct. I more mean that the level of standard Aaron and I have, it must be so high.
Yeah, and that's the coach's job to keep the standards high. And like Quinny's right, that these are the games that you beat a team like Fiji by 50. Everyone goes, well, you say you should. And then if you don't, everyone goes, well, why didn't you? They're really awkward games. And if you look over the history of just the last 10 years of this middle game, be it Japan or Samoa, Tonga, they're really awkward games, and they never really reach the heights of the against that they do against the big country. So that's understandable. But Quinny's right. The point that got me, we had an 8v6 scrum, right? 8v6, so eight Irish men in the scrum and 6 Fijians because of cards, with no winger on the blind side, and Ireland didn't take advantage of any of that. On one scrum, they went too early, so they gave away a bent arm, and then another time, they didn't go to the blind side. Fiji put 4 on the open side and no on the blind side, and they went to where the 4 were. That, as a coach, that would drive me nuts. So there were things there that were not perfect by a lot of by any stretch. But as Quinny said, in the future, when you get a sin bin and you get that scenario, there's got to be space. You've got to attack that space.
But Matt, could I just say that if I'm in and look, we both agree in this, Ireland need to be better and maybe better prepared for this stuff. And I think they'll look at that and they'll talk about it, because it actually happened in New Zealand as well, didn't it? In that second test in Dunedin. Yep. Different story with the All Blacks, or different beasts there. Sure. But I'm also thinking it's not always that easy. But we have to be kind of bring it up. It's not always that easy when there's 13 players against you, because there's a desperation. There's a there's actually an energy increase from the players out of fear. God, we're going to get ripped open here. But I just think Ireland need to be conscious of that. And what you need in that situation, I think, is a real calm heads, people who give good communication. And I think Ireland got to try eventually with Mac Hansen, from the Casey Pass. But I just think it's something that they've just got to be conscious of and really kind of capitalize in that space. And it's something that maybe could arise again in the future.
Well, Quinny, you have strategy, you have yellow card and red card strategies. So what, the what ifs, coaches go through, what if they're down by 1? What if they're down by 2? What if we're down by 1? What if we're down by 2? You have these strategies. So when that scrum's called, I think Joey was on the field. That's the strategists in the team need to look and say, okay, let's go here. That's what they'd be disappointed with. But I'm with you. At halftime, Alan, in that game, I think you called the stat out when you were calling. There were 107 tackles made by Fiji and only 32 made by Ireland. So it tells you the commitment of the Fijians to their defensive line, which I thought was admirable. But if you're looking back, if we get in our helicopters and you're Andy Farrell and the coach, he's not going to be happy with that. But overall, does it mean much? Not really. So coming into this week's game, I don't think it has much of a bearing on what we can see or hope to see from Ireland.
I think they'll actually learn a fair bit out of it as well, Matt.
I agree, mate.
That's why I'm not being overcritical, because in simple terms, yes, a lot of stuff could have been a lot better, but actually you can get some stuff out of that, given that the result was never in doubt as regards. I don't think Ireland were ever going to lose it, so they can look back, and a lot of these players can be handpicked by the coaches and talk to them about what they were feeling, what they need to do better. And obviously with the different people, and they look back in the video clips, so you can actually get a lot out of it, in a sense that it'll be better and get a bit of understanding and maybe what's required in these kind of flat situations, maybe in one of the pool games, exactly, where you're expected to win by 20, 30 points.
Well, you Quinny, you remember 2007 World Cup, Namibia
and Georgia. I didn't play though, Matt. I didn't play, so nobody could have blamed me.
They can't point the finger at you, Alan. No matter what anyone says, they can't point. But Ireland came out.
That's what Frankie Sheehan kept saying to me. He said they can't blame us because we're sitting on the sideline.
You and Ferris, and who was the other one?
Oh, Brian Carney.
Brian
Carney, Ferris, Stevie Ferris, myself, and the Ulster prop. Oh my God, I'm gone blank. You coached him.
Not Tommy.
No, he was the tight head prop.
Fitzpatrick?
No, a young. Oh my God, what's his name? I'm gone blank. He'll kill us. Anyway.
There was a group of you that can't take any responsibility for Namibia. That's good.
Right, Quinn, enough of the old glory years. Bring it back, just a final one on the Fiji performance. Obviously, so disappointing for Joey Carbery. I thought did pretty well. Matt sort of mentioned that in studio. But a word on Jack Crowley and the other debutants, Al, they impress you?
Yeah, they did. I think didn't get a huge amount of opportunity, and it was such a stop-start game. I think it was great to see Cian Prendergast get on. Jack Crowley and obviously Jeremy Loughman started the game. So again, it's a special moment when you win your first cap. And it's not always a kind of a razzmatazz fanfare. Sometimes it can be a little bit like this, but you can be sure those players were absolutely incredibly proud on Saturday evening, and it's a great moment for them. I think they, for all three, it was stop-start, wasn't it? So it was difficult, and there wasn't that kind of continuous flow to the game for Jeremy Lockman to make. He did well. He made a lot of good carries. He had plenty of involvements, same as Keane Prendergast when he came on. He's a very abrasive player, big physical guy. I think his ceiling can kind of grow a lot higher as well. I think Jack Crowley looked composed, and if you think your halfbacks in a situation like that in pivotal positions, I think his body language in the last number of weeks has impressed people, and his skill set, his footwork, his physicality. I think people are starting to really kind of get a feeling by those actions that there's more to come from this guy. There's a lot of talk, obviously, how he's impressed Irish squad players in training, and the way he's kind of trained with the squad and stepped up there. So, a lot of stuff happens in squad sessions, and Matt will know this. Behind the scenes, you bring in one or two younger players into your national side, and everybody goes, "Wow, this guy is." There's something there. So of course, there's something there. It's not new, because Jack Crowley was outstanding for the under-20s 2 years ago. Very dominant, very direct, loads of great skills. So there is a hope that can, and it's looking like he's going to be on the bench this week, and he's accelerated into a really good position. I just really feel sorry for Joey Carbery again, because Matt and I both spoke about this with you last week, and we're talking about getting some consistency. I was talking, nudging towards Joey Carbery getting through Fiji, good performance, coming off on 65, 70 minutes when the job is done. Jack Crowley getting his cap, but Carbery starting against Australia.
Me too.
No,
me too.
Just for obvious reasons, that we just want to see more of Joey Carbery against the top tier 1 nations.
Yeah.
And I said this, and it's a fact. Johnny Sexton would be saying, "No, I'm playing. I want to play every minute I can," and he's right, and that would have happened. But for that depth, and for Joey Carbery, and to try and get some more of that bit of swagger that we know he has out of him on a consistent basis, and if there was an injury, that he's more prepared. There's more stuff in the bank, so it didn't happen. So I really feel sorry for him again. But I think Crowley now could, he could actually ask a question or two here, depending what it is. It's very early days, and Australia are going to be tough on Saturday night. They're going to be really reacting from that loss to Italy, and it's a tough environment. But it's a great position and a great opportunity for Jack Crowley. Yeah,
let's hope we see Joey back out there. But Jack Crowley looks like an absolute player. Matt, if we move on to this weekend, your favourite team, Australia, obviously. But obviously that disappointing defeat to Italy, a very much different side, second string, if you can say that. But as a squad, they're going to be hurting, and they want a big response.
They're humiliated. Stu, there's no doubt about it. It's the first ever loss by an Australian team to Italy. Now, look, the coach, Dave Rennie's getting criticism, and I don't think he should, because you've got to give. In the World Cup cycle, there's certain games you've got to try and give your other players, besides your starting 15, time. Because when you look at the Australians this year, they had 3 tests against England, then they go into the Championship, Argentina, New Zealand and South Africa. There's no easy games there. There's no game there where you say, we can blood a few guys or give guys time. Every game, at home especially, you're under huge pressure. So this was a game to do that. So, and if anyone's to blame, it's the players. But here's the counterintuitive stuff about that. Wallabies were down by a considerable margin, fought back, and should have won that game. The week before, against France, they led that game and played magnificent. I think they'll win try of the year from that game, and were quite superb, and lost in the last minute. They then played Scotland, should have lost and won. So if you look at the form of the Australians, beat South Africa, lost South Africa, beat Argentina, lost Argentina, should have beaten New Zealand except for an outrageous refereeing decision, then get smacked in Eden Park. They're like that. And trying to pick where their form is impossible. So don't try. There's no evidence to say which of those Wallaby teams, performances we'll see on Saturday. Here's the but. And they say never believe anything you hear before a but you have to. This team is capable of beating good sides, but they're hugely inconsistent. And that's their discipline. Their discipline is very poor. They, red cards, yellow cards. They gave away more penalties. I think it was almost twice as many penalties as New Zealand did in the championship. Now you can't win games when you're doing that, and that's what's been costing them matches that they should have won. So while the stats on the pure L's and W's of who's won and who's lost are against the Wallabies, they are not far away. Now you've got Hooper coming back into that side. He's an inspiration. He's a great player. They didn't have him for the championship. You've got. I personally think that Skelton will be in that side to start against Ireland. There's a number of players coming in that are quality players. Now it's not the best Wallaby team we've ever seen, and Australian rugby is digging itself out of a pretty deep hole. But they are capable of winning on Saturday. But whether they can put that together for 80 minutes, look, just no one knows. No one knows whether they can do that.
Alan, Matt mentioned there, they'll obviously change their team very much from that Italy side, but like Michael Hooper there, what a class act he's been. Also Bernard Foley, I think, will come in at 10. He's sort of come back, and which is great to see for him because I rate him as well. And then if Skelton plays, he's caused problems for Leinster, as you well know. So certainly have some big names to come in.
Yeah, they have, and they made 11 changes from the team that lost to France, and I think they probably deserved to win in France. They were outstanding, the attack, and we know with Australia, there's always a reaction to performances when they're disappointing. They really kind of their skill set is brilliant, and I think ultimately at times. Against in games that they've lost this year, it's been up front. They've become a bit disjointed. They've become a bit guys kind of playing on their own and not a cohesive unit. I think they have some very, very good players in the team. Hooper is an inspirational player. I've watched him for so long. He's an inspiration to anyone that wants to show clips of work rate, honesty, passion, the way he kind of just goes about his business all the time. He's a brilliant attitude. He's incredibly respectful to everybody, and he's as hard as nails. So I just love Michael Hooper. I think he's incredibly honest in his assessment after some of these disappointing performances. But Matt said it, when they get going, Australia can be absolutely brilliant. And if they get a sniff, and we saw the incredible try they got in the game in France, they're a very, very dangerous side. So, Ireland are going to have to be really tuned in here. They have a lot of powerful guys as well. But I think Bernard Foley is a very, very effective player, but he's someone that they can run at. And I think if Stuart McAvoy starts, Ireland certainly want to be trying to get him down Bernard Foley's channel. It's no rocket science. Most teams do it, going after 10s and trying to get into that area. So Valentini, you've got to stop him at source. He gets a lot of brilliant carries. He gets over the gain line. And if they get in that position, I think Nick White, I think he'll start Matt at scrum half.
For sure.
He will. I think he's a wonderful player. I know he can come up with a bit of dramatics at times, but I think he's a brilliant, brilliant player. I love the fact the way he can bounce in and out of rucks. He can make breaks. He gives short passes, wide passes, and incredibly intelligent player. So,
Quinny, interesting on Nick, just to interrupt you on Nick, he's one of the guys, he went over to Exeter Chiefs and had a couple of seasons at Exeter Chiefs, came back a vastly improved player. He is playing really good rugby at the moment. I agree with everything you're saying about him.
And I think Kellaway has been outstanding for Australia. Really, really sniffs an opportunity and scored a lot of tries this year, brilliant tries as well. And Australia seem to score outstanding tries with remarkable passes. And if these passes stick, they can rip teams apart. problem for them, it breaks down, and that's what Ireland will be trying to do. Don't give them that space and opportunity to get the little flicks out of the tackles, the offloads. But they're a very good side. So, and they showed it against France. And Matt mentioned as well. I think you've got to think that Skelton is going to be hovering here somewhere, whether he starts or not. And Dave Rennie will be trying to get him in the mix. So. They're a good side. They're a dangerous side, and when they get it right, they can hurt teams and cause a lot of problems. They're ambitious. They'll run it out of nowhere. So you kind of think, bar the weather, which is not going to be great on Saturday night, that this could be a brilliant match with both sides trying to play a lot of rugby and keep the ball alive and move it.
Matt, are you expecting the wide game plan that Alan's calling there from Australia?
Yeah, the Australians are, very, very much to their credit, are going back to our DNA and are playing the game in a traditional Australian manner. Run the ball. I said, to give you an idea, when I was a kid, I kicked a drop goal once and I got booed because I didn't run it.
Is that because it missed or because you just?
Oh, it went through. Wasn't that great? It only just went over, but I didn't expect to get booed. But that was the attitude. What are you doing that for? Run the ball. And they're doing that. And Quinny's right. They are showing these seconds of brilliance. Against South Africa in Adelaide, they just scored some absolutely mesmeric tries. And then the next week they come out and they are horrid. Off the penalties, errors, unforced errors, knock-ons, they give away scrum penalties, collapse mauls, you name it, yellow cards. And that's the problem with their play at the moment. So do I expect them to try and run the ball? Now, it's going to bucket rain according to Alan's forecast there. We were talking before we came on air, which is a shame, but you just got to deal with it. I don't think that'll affect Australia too much. In some ways, it could be a plus because the way Ireland are playing now, that they want to do the same thing. Ireland want to move the ball, that multi-phase, high-tempo game. When you've got a wet ball, it slows down, and that's going to help the Australians against what is only can be described as brilliant Irish attack. So it's not going to be a plus for both sides. But therefore, I think Skelton will start and put the terror that he has in the past into Irish sides. Now he's only one man against 15, and the Irish proved against South Africa the myth about the big men. There's one other guy I think I just want to mention that I hope starts is Nick Frost. And I had a lot to do with Nick in his developing years back in Sydney. 6'7", is the most promising second rower Australia's produced since John Eales. He was state 100-metre hurdles champion. He's a decathlete champion at age group level. Could have gone into college basketball in America. Was signed by the Crusaders, spent 2 years in their academy before coming back over to the Brumbies. To give you an idea how dopey we are in Australia, the Crusaders had spoken to him about 8 months before the Waratahs spoke to him. Like, you just shake your head and go, the kid's playing in Sydney. But fortunately, he's come home, and he is potentially a fantastic footballer at the beginning of his international career. So he was supposed to play last week, but he got a bit injured and was sick. I believe he's back in the fold. He's someone to watch. Again, there is a lot of potential in this Australian side. When you've got a guy like Frost that's 6'7", 6'8", you don't lose too many lineouts, and that's what he's in the side for. Then you've got someone like Skelton that's 140 kilos coming into that maul. That makes their forward pack a whole lot different.
Alan, if we bring it back to Ireland, listening to Johnny Sexton and Josh van der Fleer this week saying, because it's the last test match or every test match, they mark it on the level of performance, but it is their last match of the year. So they want to go out in a high before the start of the Six Nations, because that's a long wait if they don't deliver a good day out on Saturday.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, again, there's a lot of similarities with where we were in 2018, and everyone's very conscious of that. But they can't kind of take the foot off the pedal and say, well, we're trying to, get ourselves right. We don't want to show our hand here. You've got to kind of perform in the here and now. I think trying to build more confidence, resilience in the squad. And I think no matter what happens at the World Cup next year, it's still, if Ireland get out of the pool stages, which we all hope they will, Scotland are still going to have a little say in what happens about the two teams that come out of that group. That they'll be more confident. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult anyway. But what we're enjoying at the moment, an incredible series win in Australia, in New Zealand, a really good Six Nations that Ireland could have, narrowly lost out on. France were brilliant, obviously, and had those fixtures at home, which helps. And they were, favourites probably for the World Cup in their own country. So it's a really good period. Again, this Irish team are playing really well. They're easy to watch. They're enjoyable to watch. I think we had a period at the start under Andy Farrell and Mike Catt where that transition was a little bit different, and it wasn't all clicking and all happening. So I don't think anyone's going to get carried away, and they shouldn't. But it's really enjoyable now, and there's a real buzz about this team. They look pretty tight. They look a happy camp, and that's credit to Andy Farrell. I think he's done a magnificent job. I think he's an inspirational leader, and the here and now is really good. But Saturday night is about trying to get a result and trying to kind of build another layer of self-belief and confidence and in this group of players. And there's still a couple of players missing. I want to see Ian Henderson back in the mix as well. And, James Lowe hasn't played in this November series. He was outstanding. And I love the way he responded from the previous Six Nations where he struggled defensively. He became not just a good attacking player for Ireland, but a really important part of their kicking strategy as well. That left boot is so effective. So there's a lot of good players there. I'm disappointed for Robbie Henshaw, obviously, but Bundy Aki is back in the mix. Will be back in the mix this week. But I'm really looking forward to Stuart McAvoy. This is a step up, and this is one that he can lay a marker down. He wanted to do it last week. But a win is important, and they will not take Australia lightly, I don't think. And there's no guarantee here that Ireland are going to suddenly turn up on Saturday night and win this game easy. And it's a difficult task for them.
Yeah, Matt, another opportunity it looks like for Stuart McAvoy. Well deserved in my eyes, but Bundy Aki is back in the fold. But it looks like Andy Farrell will go with McCluskey. The right call in your eyes, yes?
Oh, 100%. 100% the right call. McCluskey's been excellent. But again, it's the right call if we're looking forward to the World Cup, because the four centres that you would plan to take would be the three stalwarts, Ringrose at outside centre. Henshaw can play both. Bundy can play both at a pinch, although he prefers inside. And then you've got McCluskey who can play inside or 10. So you've got a lot of positions covered with those four players. And there might be a day where Stuart is – now, obviously, the other three are in front of him right now. But there might be a day when Stuart's required in a big game, and you've got to give guys time in big games when that's the case. I thought McCluskey was sensational for the short period he was on against South Africa. And I thought he played really, really well last week as well. So he's not someone – that's not a gamble. This is a guy that's delivered in two games, and now he's got an opportunity in another big game. And I expect him to keep the high standards that he set on the way through. And we've got to say the same pretty much across the board. Jimmy O'Brien, that's the rumour that he's going to get his opportunity on the wing. I think that's a really positive thing for him. Therefore, he could become a really valuable bench player that covers a number of positions across that back three and even into the three-quarter line. So against the quality opposition, this is what the young man needs. All pluses. And then when we go onto the bench, Casey gets his chance and Jack Crowley that we spoke about before, all getting their chance. And just to add on to Crowley, the thing I love about him, I saw him on the field. He was on no more than a few minutes. And there he was laying down the law. You could see him speaking and demanding and leading. And that's exactly what your 10 has to do, whether he's got one first cap or 100 caps. You've got to be the leader, the quarterback on the field. And that's what the other players respect about leadership from their 10s. So all those selections, if they're right, and that's what we've been told, I think are really positive ones.
Yeah, definitely. Alan, I just want to touch on your last answer there. You were chatting about Farrell, even the likes of Sexton, Van der Fleer, and Shane, all these guys getting nominated for awards. It is a cracking time to be in that Ireland camp.
Yeah, it is, and it's so deserving for all of them to, and they've got to enjoy it, and they're special awards to be nominated for, and I think they're pretty deserving. It's been a sensational year for Ireland again. I think I'm always nervous, and the player in me still goes, God, don't talk it up too much now, because Australia could beat Ireland on Saturday.
Yeah,
it would be a shock, but it could happen. So the player in me still goes, be careful here, and don't of course Ireland should win the game, and that's what they'll be expecting for themselves to do. But as I said, Australia, if they get a chance, if they get a sniff, on the back of a really disappointing their last two losses, I think they would have been heartbroken in France, and then to go to Italy last week, and they had a kick in the end of the game to win it, which would have kind of papered over a poor performance, and a brilliant one from Italy, to be fair. So yeah, they'll be gunning for them on Saturday night, but it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see this recognition, and Johnny Sexton at 37 being nominated again for World Player of the Year. We know what Josh Van der Fleer has done all season. He's been wonderful. The consistency in his performances, the growth in his game around his carries and his aggression has been brilliant. So they deserve to be there. Dan Sheehan, part of me would be putting Dan Sheehan as in the World Player of the Year in the senior category as well, because wow, just phenomenal. I just, you get feelings at games at times, and I was just there, just to be there in New Zealand and just see this guy and Matt will know this from being in New Zealand. Even in that first test, when Ireland conceded some tries that were a little bit against the run of play at times, they were punished by some All Blacks brilliance. Just to see Sheehan there running around the field and taking on ball and swatting guys and charging up and down the field, I was in awe, and he's just grown so much as well, and he's a wonderful player. And in that position of having Ronan Keller as well, I think we've two world-class hookers who are still so young. They're going to be there for a long time. Hopefully they stay injury-free. But and then the coach, I just think I love the way he goes about his business. He's quite relaxed. He's very approachable. He's not in any way bothered by people around him or media people, or he's very pragmatic, and he's honest, and he's old school. Andy Farrell was one of the hardest rugby league players that ever played the game. That does just happen by chance. That's internal strength and external strength and physicality and all that stuff, but he's hard. And I think it doesn't guarantee you to be a successful coach and do brilliant. And what a tough job to go in after Joe Schmidt, who had incredible success with Ireland. And I just think he's managed this whole pressurized environment really well. And he knows World Cup next year, that's where the real judgment comes in. And unfortunately, that's there'll be a lot of pressure there. But I think he's been brilliant for this team, and the players love him. I think he has a great kind of level of respect from all the people, and that can change very quickly in sport. Unfortunately, you have 9 brilliant results, 1 bad results, and people can focus on that. But at the moment, we're in a good place, and he's capped a lot of players as well. People forget that. Since Andy Farrell has taken over, there's been a lot of new caps have got opportunities, and he's not afraid to do that. And he's done a brilliant job and deserves to be nominated. Yeah,
he definitely has done some job. Matt, just touch on a couple of other matches last weekend. Don't know if you saw it, New Zealand-Scotland, what a game that was. Scotland's best ever chance in my eyes to beat. The All Blacks didn't quite get it done, but they looked pretty good. But the All Blacks came out too strong in the end.
Yes, Stu, New Zealand. We've sort of caught up a little bit with Ireland beating New Zealand. We forget New Zealand is still a very high quality team. They won their trophy against South Africa. They won the championship, and they're steaming full ahead at the moment. They've also got a New Zealand A side, for want of a better term, playing. So they're trying to develop their depth, and they changed some selections. But the Scotland performance, I think, should remind us, Stuart, that if we look around the world, everyone is beating. The top 10 teams are beating each other regularly. It's amazing. Like Argentina beating England, the Wallabies should have beaten France. Ireland beat New Zealand. New Zealand beat South Africa. Ireland beat South Africa. There is not a lot between the sides, and I think the refereeing has something to do with that too, with the penalties at scrums that are becoming far more frequent in the game. They changed the game, and penalties are easy to come by because there's more of them, and the referees are being more pedantic. That's the way they've been told to referee. But that brings the gap between the sides, or narrows the gap between the sides. And Scotland played very well, not take anything away from them. They played it really, really well. But that New Zealand side are getting back in the groove of learning how to win even when they're not at their best. They did it a couple of times. So I think that's, again, encouraging for rugby across the globe. And it makes next year's World Cup fascinating because there is so little between the sides. And it also makes it hard for Ireland because we've got Scotland in our pool. So we don't necessarily want Scotland to be playing really well at this stage of their career. But that's also hard. Look ahead to the Six Nations. Ireland have got to go to Murrayfield next year. So it's just a really, if you look at what you were saying about the Irish side being a great time for Irish rugby, which it is, it's a really good time for international rugby at the top end because teams aren't getting walloped by 60 and 70 points like we saw a few years ago. There's not a lot between the teams. And the teams that lose one week will win the next. And that makes it really exciting for us to bring it across to everyone out there as working in the media, but also just for the supporters watching the games. It's only the bookies that I think that are getting a hiding at the moment, which is always good.
Alan, do you agree with Matt there? So competitive out there between all the teams, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's probably not what any of the international coaches really want as regards consistency, and anyone can beat on their day, and I hope that is the case at the World Cup. I think these November internationals have been brilliant. You just look at the Wales results. I think they were under a lot of pressure there against Argentina. You'd think I was fancying Argentina to beat them, and they got it right. The result, Italy against Australia, is the one that really jumps out. And any neutrals, I know Matt wasn't happy, but anyway, any neutrals would think that's brilliant. And it's obviously disappointing for Scotland. It would have been, they were in a great position. They were 9 points up in that second half. I think the impact off the bench for New Zealand and a lack of panic got them over the line. But it is, there's a competitive kind of nature to this, and it's not as predictable as maybe we've seen before, which is good for the game. I think, obviously, if you look at a World Cup next year and say who's going to win it, you think, of course, France and South Africa will be probably the first two names. But there's lots of teams there who could get their run right. And that run, sometimes we talk about World Cup cycles and kind of 2-year strategies and everybody getting everything right 2 years out. Sometimes it doesn't work like that. People can get a run now in the Six Nations. 1 or 2 players come in. Staying injury free can be really important. And, in a quarterfinal or semi-final, you could find one of those performances that we're certainly hoping for as Irish people, that we can find one of those performances. But, you look at the World Cups and the opportunities we had before, with respect to, Wales in 2011, it was a very good Welsh side who probably should have got to a final and beaten France in a semi-final. But I fancied Ireland and Wellington that day, I thought, and they just never got it right. 2015 in Cardiff against Argentina, the 5 injuries after beating France, topping the pool, avoiding New Zealand, we get Argentina, and you think this is a chance again. This is one that I think we're going to win, and we didn't. You know, the injuries actually came back to haunt us a little bit. Tommy Bowe was missing, O'Connell, Sean O'Brien, Peter O'Mahony. Was there one?
I'm just bringing up all the bad memories for you.
I know, but I just think, you know, we've had a bit of bad luck as well. We've had a bit of bad luck, and we're going to listen to it again if we don't get past the quarter-final. But anyway, if we do get out of the group, maybe the expectation won't be the same, and maybe the story will be different. Who knows? But you know, there's I just think these November internationals they're brilliant to watch. Matt and I have spoken about this before. People often say they're friendlies, and you know, they're test matches. There's no trophies on the line. I think we will see in the future these games being more significant as regards maybe a global league, which may improve the game again and improve the viewerships and the people who have an interest in this. But you know, I played in test matches. These games are not friendlies. They're not kind of blasé. People want to win them, and they're termed as test matches, but they're incredibly competitive, and there's a lot of kudos for winning them, and they're important. But I think it is great. You go into a lot of these games now, and you're not really sure who's going to win and who's going to get a performance right on the day, and that's certainly the case for Ireland's game on Saturday against Australia.
Yeah, you've answered my last question there, Matt. What are we saying Saturday? Are you going for an Ireland win?
Well, everything says Ireland should win. You know, their record at the Aviva, they're undefeated, they're number 1 in the world. And the Wallabies have just been beaten by Italy and lost. You know, their season has been highly inconsistent. They've beaten some good sides. But all the things we've just said, you cannot guarantee that. You cannot guarantee that the Wallabies won't turn up like they did in Adelaide, like they did in Melbourne against South Africa and Adelaide, like they did in Melbourne against New Zealand, and like they did in Paris against France. If the Wallabies turn up in that frame of mind, they can win, and it would not surprise me at all. But I just can't guarantee that. I can't give anyone listening to the pod any evidence that that's going to be the case, except to say it's a possibility. But Ireland should win this game. It's an excellent Irish side if they put that out. They're in great form. All the things we just said about their coach, their leadership, their star players, and one other thing, Hooper against Josh van der Fleer, the 2 best open side flankers in the world. You know, one of the all-time greats in Hooper against a possible all-time great in van der Fleer. You know, that alone will be brilliant. And on a wet day, open sides come into their own. That's the day that they really earn their money. And there is no way on God's green earth this is a friendly, right? So it's just not going to happen. It's just doesn't occur. Alan is exactly right with that. I think it's going to be I think it's the game of the round, for want of a better term, across all the games. I think this will be a really positive game because of the attitude both teams have. The rain might have a say, but really close game. Ireland should win, but won't be surprised at all if the men in gold come away with it.
Well, Matt, you've teed up perfectly there. Don't forget, if you're listening, guys, to like and subscribe to the VMTV Rugby Pod. It'd be great to have you along. Lads, thanks so much for today. It's been really enjoyable as ever, and make sure you tune in Saturday night at 7 o'clock on VMTV too. Should be great. Thank you.